Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another episode of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people are making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got quite an interesting assortment. We've got quite a few birds, a parrot and a couple ducks, and a couple Shelducks actually. We've also got a Langur species and a couple really cool extinct animals. So let's get started, or let's get quacking. So going to be starting off with the blue-billed duck, done by GreatCakesMod, of course. So let's have a look at these wonderful guys. Let's see if we can find a male. That's a female. So let's have a look at this guy. This is the male. So, this is a blue-billed duck, Oxyrhina australis. These guys are a type of Australian stiff-tailed duck. They were first described in 1836 by ornithologist John Gould, and australis means southern, hence Australian. So you can see they get the name the stiff-tailed duck because they have very thick spine-like shafts for their tail feathers, which is quite cool, and it's held above, and is when in defensive they held erect. And then the male will also hold them up for courtship displays, to get the ladies, which is quite funny. They've quite powerful feet that allow them to swim, very much like other ducks, and are able to be able to swim and dive. And they typically sit low in the water compared to a lot of other duck species. And during the breeding season, apart from the aforementioned bright blue bill, the male's head is actually glossy black, and the blackened wings are red ringed chestnut. So this is more their breeding colours, when they're most beautiful. And during the non-breeding season, then their head changes to be like a glossy black with grey speckles, and their body changes from chestnut to dark grey. The female's plumage, as we'll get into, just stays the same throughout the year. Doesn't really change much. She's got a dark brown head. Let's have a look at the female. They're a lot less interesting than the males, of course. Typically, with a lot of birds. You can see she's got like just a dark grey colour to her. Black feathers with a light tip brown as well. It gives a mottled appearance. And it actually is a publication that refers to the bands of each feathers rather than a single feather tip coloration, which is quite interesting. And the female's bill is dark grey and brown with grey-brown feet. And the male's feet are grey, and both have brown irises, and juveniles resemble an adult female, and but appear paler and have green irises. So the iris changes colour as they grow. So you can see that's what the little baby looks like, little cuties. Let's have a look at the male again. Where is he gone? Oh, that's not what we wanted. Where is he gone? Oh, he's up here, I think. There he is. Look at him running. Look at him go. Anyway, so these guys are endemic to Australia. They're found in the temperate regions of Australia. Their range extends from southern Queensland throughout New South Wales to Victoria and Tasmania. They're also widespread around Western Australia, even though they can be really found some areas as well. They can also be found in Tasmania too. And they're almost entirely aquatic, and actually seem to have difficulty walking on land. So when they walk on land, they look almost like a penguin. And during non-breeding season, they gather in flocks of several hundred, especially juveniles and young adults, in like open lakes and or dams in autumn and winter, far from shore. But the rest of the year during the breeding season, they prefer deep freshwater swamps with dense vegetation. That is kind of also they can be found in more coastal areas and dry areas, and also be found in large rivers and saltine water bodies, and also billabongs, which is quite interesting. So the behaviour is depends on their breeding cycle. So as I mentioned, the ducks gather in large flocks during the winter whilst not breeding. And although some mature adults remain in vegetative swamps to continue to breed, they also fly more frequently, probably due to their open habitat, to escape threats. And while breeding, they're quite secretive and wary, and actually will swiftly and quietly dive underwater if threatened, and resurfacing a large distance away. So they just go bloop, 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 like that, under the water. They also have a low quack, which is actually quite seldom heard, and the courtship repertoire for these guys is actually quite complex, especially for the male, and that includes rolling their cheek on the back, dab preening, or sometimes even performed by females, and sousing, which is their head is thrown into the air into a prone position, and then the back is arched and kind of, do this weird thing. And after a vigorous chase in that courtship ritual, then they will mate, and then the birds will separate and preen themselves. And in preparation for laying eggs, the females will build a nest, which the male will mostly desert the female. So that's a little bit interesting there. So you can see the lovely male colours. Here's the female, a little bit more drab, but still quite cool, a bit of a cutie. So these guys are omnivores, so they feed on invertebrates as well as seeds, buds, and fruits, and other submergent plants. And the duck feeds underwater by shifting mud with its beak. They do have a preference for small invertebrates, including mollusks, dragonflies, water beetle larvae, caddisflies, things like that. And they have quite a diverse range of food, which helps them live in quite a few habitats, which is quite cool. And they can stay underwater for an average of 10 seconds while feeding. So I mentioned they are partly migratory, so they will move in some areas from in New South Wales to the Murray River during autumn to winter. Depending on where you are, they can kind of migrate, but it just depends on the population and the individuals even. So sometimes individuals will just stay in the places, they're kind of migratory, but not really. But as we mentioned, they're kind of opportunistic breeders, so they kind of just take the chance whatever to breed. And any variety of non-captive laying is associated with water levels and hence abundance of food. So typically September, November, when there's high water, lots of food, they will have their babies. Clutch sizes typically ranges from 3 to 12, with most common being 5 to 6, and large clutch sizes indicate 2 females laying eggs in one nest. It actually appears that females will actually sometimes parasitize another's efforts, so she will lay her eggs in another female blue-billed duck's nest, and they will incubate the eggs for her, which is quite interesting. There's also some evidence of these ducks laying their eggs in nests of other water birds, like a cuckoo, trying to hide them, which is quite interesting. The incubation is between 26 to 28 days, and after hatching, the young remain in the nest for 1 day, and they're led by the female from the nest, and the young are relatively independent from their parent. When they get that age, they're pretty much able to take care of themselves immediately. The female does protect her brood, though, with hatchlings forming clusters around the female, but then about 8 weeks, they're similar in size to their parents, and within 1 year, most have full plumage. And then even in captivity, they've been observed at breeding about a year old. So in terms of their conservation, they have quite a big impact because of the draining of wetlands. So things like drainage or water harvesting or anything like that, or vegetation loss due to overgrazing, salinity, or things like that can really affect the populations. Let's have a cute little baby while we have a chance. It's a little bit sad, but they're actually doing okay. Both results in smaller habitat sizes for these water birds, but there have been strategies to really increase their populations, like producing sustainable water flows and developing management for salinity management plans and farm management plans. So the population is estimated to be about 12,000, although the creation of artificial wetlands such as water treatments will disguise the number occurring in natural wetlands. So there could be more, but we think it's a good number. They are considered, I believe, least concern. Yes, they are. And they are considered threatened, so they are protected and endangered, which is another good thing for their protection. And they're quite important. They're kind of a canary in the coal mine because these guys like healthy wetlands. So a decline in these guys since these wetlands are not good or they're not as productive as they were. So they're a great way of managing these ecosystems and tell if they've good water and things like that. Any long-term decrease is like, there's something wrong with this wetland. We need to fix it pretty much. So that would be like reducing grazing or things like that. So yeah, really, really cool. How can you not love these guys? Super, super cute. Nice, cute little ducky. So next up, this was done by GreatCakesMod. Next one's also done by GreatCakesMod. We're going to Australia again. We've got the Australian Shelduck. Another really, really cool guy. The Australian Shelduck. Let's have a look. What a cutie. So this is the male here. So these guys are also called the chestnut-breasted shelduck or mountain duck. These guys are a shelduck, so the shelducks are big goose-like ducks. They genus name is Tandora from the Celtic roots, which means pied waterfowl. And they have where they get the name, that striking, chestnut color on their breast, where they get the name, and their black body. So they're first described by William Jardine and Fenrix John Selby in 1828. And you can see the males here, they've got mostly dark with a chestnut breast, and they have a white neck collar and dark green head. The female are similar, but they are white around the eyes, you can see like that. So this is the male. Let's see if you can find a female. Got to be a female around here somewhere. There she is. That's another male. There's a female. So you can see they are quite similar, but she has a little bit more light around the eyes. And are typically smaller, though I think this is just a potentially really big female. The down, as you can see, the babies are covered with a brown crown, and like a white coat. And juvenile males are duller than the adults, and also like a white collar. And like other types of shelducks, they have a deep honk, which the males have, and the females have like a high-pitched zeek call, which is quite interesting. And these guys can get to a pretty decent size. So the size range of an Australian shelduck is between 56 to 72 centimeters, or about 22 to 28 inches, and have a wingspan between 9.4 and 94 to 132 centimeters, or 37 to 52 inches, and weigh between 1.3 to 1.6 kilograms, 2.8 to 3.5 pounds. So in terms of their distribution habitat, the Australian shelduck mainly breeds in southern Australia and Tasmania, and they're still fairly common. In the winter, they may appear farther north, and they have favourite molting grounds where they like to hang around, such as Lake George in New South Wales, and their primary habitat is lakes on fairly open country. So these guys can live in quite large flocks of over about 1,000 or more. Oh, that's not what we wanted to do. Still getting used to this new keyboard, but yeah, they still can be found in flocks of up to 1,000 or more, and extremely wary of humans when often called in their presence, but they can get used to people in urban areas. They are upright on land when grazing, but in the water they sit quite high, and young birds will dive frequently, but adult birds only dive during molting when they are flightless, or when they are injured or scared. So that's quite interesting. We'll have a look at the little babies as well. No, that's not the adult. We want to have a look at the babies. Look at the little baby. Look at how cute he is. So in terms of breeding, they often will make their nests in tree holes lined with down, holes in banks, or similar locations like that. Typically between 8 to 15 eggs are laid, and they're incubated between 30 to 33 days. And after leaving this nest hollow, the downy and flightless young often aggregate in creches between 20 to 40 birds, and sometimes even up to 100 birds, really. And very similar to, as I mentioned, the paradise shelducks and things like that. Yeah, I'm still getting used to this new bloody keyboard. We'll have a look at this female here. Really, really cool. I checked that's a female. Yep. So these guys typically feed by grazing, dabbing, or filtering, and they'll eat tubers and other materials such as saltbush or samphire, but also eat a lot of mollusks, crustaceans, and insects. So they do have a quite varied diet. So yeah, really, really cool. Another banger from GreatCakesMod. So now we're going to have a look at another shelduck all the way from India. We've got the Raja shelduck. Another really cool one. So they're also called the blackback shelduck. So these guys are found in Australia too, but as I mentioned, they're also found in places like New Guinea, which is quite cool. So the Raja shelduck, these guys are found in New Guinea and Australia. Also some of the Macaws Islands. So the specific name comes from the Klura Island, from the Raja shelduck from the island of Baru in Indonesia. So they're not found in India, like Asia, Australia too. So that's quite cool. Formerly placed in the same genus, they're actually considered a different species, or a different genus, where they're called Rajula, so there's their own genus. But you can see here, they're very, very different looking from other shelducks. Both the males and females of the species have mostly white with dark tipped wings, and you can see that quite distinctive collar of brown, of dark feathers on their kind of breast there, which is quite interesting. And when viewed from above or during a flight with wings outstretched, they typically have green bands visible on the tops of their wings, and to communicate with females, a harsh rattle with the male emits. They have like a sore breath, almost like a sore throat whistle. So these guys inhabit mangrove forests and coral coastlines around New Guinea and Australia. Also some of the Macluran Islands in eastern Indonesia. Though in Australia they typically range around coastal tropical North Australia, can be found as far south as central Queensland, west throughout Northern Territory into the Kimberley in Western Australia. And they're listed as a protected bird, so there's penalties if you hunt them. But yeah, still really cool. They tend to prefer salty waters of mangroves and paperbark tree swamps, but will visit all manners of brackish or fresh water, such as swamps, lagoons, estuaries, river deltas, lakes, and billabongs, further inland during the wet season. So these guys also form kind of long-term bonded pairs, and are usually encountered either in small flocks or as lone pairs. But during the raining season, males commonly become very irritable and have been known to attack their mates, which is a little bit sad. The duck's preferred diet: these guys eat a lot more mollusks, but they and other insects, aquatic and other insects, but also feed on worms, aquatic weeds, sedge materials, and algae. Pairs start searching for nesting sites during the month of January and February. They nest close to their primary food source, often in the hollow limbs of dead or dehydrated trees, which makes habitat destruction a particular issue for these guys. We'll have a look at the cute little babies as well. Let's have a look at these cute little guys. No, I've had enough of you. So let's see if that's a male over there. Yeah, they look pretty much the same. But let's have a look at the babies. So these guys actually do not use nesting material other than their own down feathers. Egg laying for these guys typically is completed by May or June, but depends on the extent of the wet season. So there's a little bit of variety there, or a little bit of variation. And the clutches typically ranges from 6 to 12 eggs, and incubation typically lasts for about 30 days for these guys. So yeah, really, really cool. Love the Raja Shelduck. Definitely going to do a job there. That's another GreatCakesMod. So next up, we're going to have a look at another bird. We've got the military macaw. So I'm quite excited to talk about this one. Let me just get the information up. The military macaw. So they're not too different from the macaws, but we'll have a look at these guys. Look at them, really, really cool. So the military macaw, these guys are kind of a medium to large size macaw and are named after their green and red plumage that kind of looks like a military uniform. So they're native to, they were first described by Carnelius in 1766, and there are 3 different subspecies recognized. So Aro is the Tupani word for macaw, as they get their name, and militaris means military in Latin. And there's 3 different subspecies. They come from western Mexico. These types of species comes from Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, and the other comes from northwestern Argentina. So there's a little bit of variety in their populations there. So these guys measure from 70 to 85 centimeters, or 27 to 33 inches long on average, with a 99 to 110 centimeter, or 33 to 43 inch wingspan. These birds are mostly green plumed, as you can see, with light blue and yellow flight and tail feathers, and a bright red patch on their forehead. Also, kind of like with most macaws, they have a bare face with white in color with these black striations there. They also have this, as I mentioned, that really big, strong bill, and our yellow iris. And the main way you can tell them apart from the great green macaw is their smaller size, completely black bill, and overall darker and deeper plumage. And then they can be separated by sounds and things like that. So in terms of behavior, these guys can live in large flocks, and like other macaws, they can live between 50 to 60 years in the wild. They're often heard long before they are seen, as they are a very noisy bird, as they make lots of cracking and shrieking sounds. And military macaws have been observed more frequently in the morning and evening, so they're likely considered crepuscular. And very similar to other species of macaw, these guys will roost in flocks and then forage at dawn. Their diet consists of mostly seeds, but they will eat fruits and leaves. They've been observed like using water and actually consuming latex, which is quite interesting. They do have a somewhat narrow diet compared to a lot of other species of macaws, so they don't eat quite as much. They also form lots of big groups around macaw licks along riverbanks that allow them to get like clay deposits that allows them to remove toxins from all the vegetation and seeds that they eat. So it just helps them be able to. It also provides dietary salt, which often can be missing from their diet. So it just helps them, keep themselves nice and healthy. So as I mentioned, they do live around tropical deciduous and semi-deciduous forests, and they're a canopy species. because they require a large canopy of detritus and subdetritus-like foliage for feeding and breeding and nesting behavior. They typically use canopy trees for protection from heat and predators, though they typically live at elevations between 600 to 1500 meters, higher in the mountains than most macaws ever ranged. However, they will seasonally fly down to lowlands and have a look around there. And they often nest on cliff faces or the tops of trees that can be up to 200 meters off the ground, which is quite interesting. And the three different subspecies are mainly distinguished from where you are, though there's some slight size differences. And they have been released in the Florida, in the US, whether deliberately or by accident, because of hurricanes. But there is a small population that is breeding there, and may only persist due to continuing releasing of macaws. So that's not a good thing. But their population is estimated to be between 2,000 and 7,000 individuals and is considering to decrease. And they are considered vulnerable as they face many threats that a lot of animals face in the Amazon, such as deforestation, crops, mining, roads, and already fragmented populations, which makes it hard for them to meet and prevent interbreeding. Though, luckily, they sadly are considered, Appendix 1. That means you can't trade them. But research shows that these guys are often trafficked because people like them as pets, which is a little bit sad. But another big thing is their diet. So their diet is quite narrow, and being specialized in certain things, there's a big issue. So if their environment to take a hit and they lost access to many of their foods, they could be greatly affected. There is promise, however, they have a less narrow diet during certain times of the year, so they may be able to adapt to survive. And the another big thing is because of their fragmented habitats, genetic diversity, because they obviously need to live and mate with each other, and we don't want them inbreeding, and because they can't access other gene pools. So it's just those kind of populations just get too similar to each other and get inbred, which we don't want. But yeah, really, really cool. So this one was done by Reptile Shed, or Reptile Productions, I believe that's another name for them. But yeah, really, really cool. Love these macaws. And look at these little cuties. Look at the little guy. I love these guys. Another great macaw. Definitely a big fan. So next up, we've got another mod. This one's from Monsoon. I know everyone loves a good Monsoon mod. So let's have a look at a Monsoon mod. So this is, we got an interesting monkey. So this is a golden, Geese golden Langur. So these guys are also simply known as the golden Langur. These guys are an old world monkey that actually found in the western Assam, India, so quite a small region, in the neighbouring foothills of the Black Mountains of Bhutan. So they're actually long considered sacred by a lot of many Himalayan people, and they were first brought to the attention of the Western world by naturalist Edward Pitcher Gee in 1950s, where they get their name. So as I mentioned that. And then they had expeditions finding them and things like that. So really, really interesting. It's considered two different subspecies, and they're separated by a geological fault in the Himalayas. So there's one subspecies on one side, and the northern parts are ranged to Bhutan, and then the southern one lives into southern Bhutan and into northern India. The Bhutaniensis one is the one that lives a little bit more high, and then the southern part of the range is the type subspecies, which is interesting. And they have been known to hybridize with other species of langur, which is interesting. So in terms of their physical description, the coat of these guys, you can see a creamy to kind of golden color, and on their flanks and chest is typically darker than the other rust-covered ones, while the coat juveniles typically lighter, silvery white to white bluff color. And the coat changes seasonally from white to cream coloured in the summer to dark golden or chestnut in the winter. And the long whiskers protect their ears from rain during the monsoon. As you can see, they've got quite long whiskers there. And they have a black face with a large wool of hair that kind of gives them their crown. They kind of look kind of regal, don't you think? Look really, really cool. Definitely a big fan of these langurs. And you can see the big whiskers there as well. Or the big, big bits of hair around the face there. So they actually are also considered sexually dimorphic. So males are quite a bit larger and more robust than the females. An average male, adult male, weighs about 10.8 kilograms, or 24 pounds, and a female weighs about 9.5 kilograms, or 21 pounds. Typically, their head to body ranges from 50 to 75 centimeters, or 20 to 30 inches, and they have a long tail between 70 to 100 centimeters, or 28 to 39 inches in length. So as I mentioned, these guys are found in about a 30,000 square kilometer area, which is much as actually unsuitable habitat. They typically are bounded by rivers, and because of all these rivers and subpopulations, there's, a lot of these rivers and things that's allowed different species of langur to survive. There are primarily two subpopulations that are actually fragmented by a highway, which is a little bit sad. So, but there is research trying to help them, bring them together. The larger northern population is estimated to be about 5,500 individuals, and the southern population is a lot more fragmented and only about 1,800 individuals, which is a little bit sad. But in terms of the behavior and ecology, not too different from other langurs. They are confined to the trees. They climb around in them. During the rainy season, they'll actually obtain their water from dew or rain-drenched leaves, but also their diet is herbivores. They'll eat both ripe and unripe fruits, mature and young leaves, seeds, buds, and flowers. And in terms of their social lives, they typically live in groups of about 8, or a troop of about 8, which is several females around a dominant male. The smallest group that had been observed is 4 individuals, but the largest was 22, so there's an average about 8 individuals. And the adult gender ratio was about 2.3 females for every male. So, although the majority group have only 1 male. So typically there's a head male, but sometimes there'll just be another one. You can see here's the alpha male here for our group. Really, really cool. But sadly, they are considered endangered, so they have a decreasing population trend. So the total mature population estimated between 6,000 to 6,500, and they're considered one of the most endangered primates in India and Bhutan. And most of them are only found in protected reserves, but their population, because they're so fragmented, is still decreasing. So hopefully we get some more protections on them, but they aren't doing super bad. They are endangered. But luckily, where they're living now is mostly protected areas. They just need some help expanding, which is going to be an uphill battle, of course, for most things. But look at this cute little baby. Really, really cute. So that was done by Monsoon. Next up, we got another couple GreatCakesMod. We're going back into prehistory. We're going to have a look at Hulitherium. So let's have a look at these wonderful guys. This is a Hulitherium, so it means Huti beast, after the Huti people. So these guys are actually a marsupial. They're related to the famous Zygomaturus, so maybe say that. And they lived in New Guinea, so during the Pleistocene. And their name honors Bernard Tomasettii, who was a Catholic priest in Papua New Guinea, who actually brought the fossils of this guy to the attention of experts. So it's nice that he was honored in his name, which is quite cool. So the story of this guy, when excavating a bank to widen the Purani Mission airstrip in Wapeg in New Guinea to comply with new regulations, the workers there unearthed these fossils in 1967, and they reportedly were actually frightened because by the discovery of their bones, as the culture associated them with their ancestors. So the material was actually somewhat damaged due to prodding until they were recognized and brought to the attention of Father Bernard Tomasettii, who recognized their significance. And then geologists Paul Williams and Michael Plain had field expeditions to find more of the animals. And what they found was a partial skeletal of a diprotodont, as well as like a well-preserved skull, teeth, mandibles, some vertebrae, all that good stuff. And then in 1986, it was named Hulitherium Tomasettii, as we mentioned, of why it's got the name. Typical, a log discovered in the same bed was actually described, and it was thought to be between 38,000 to 2,500 years ago. So they would have been potentially quite young. The Prehistoric site around his marine limestone is late Oligocene until it was filled with lava during the Middle Pleistocene. So these guys kind of lived around that time, Pleistocene time. So they would have been around, with famous big mammoths and things like that. Really, really cool anyway. So in terms of their anatomy, these guys had 3 incisors, no canines, 1 premolar and 5 molars, which is quite interesting. And then it had a high arched palate, which is really interesting. And the first incisor for these guys was the largest. Like most marsupials, they have very weird skulls, which is interesting. And there's like other parts of it known that actually is quite interesting. They had a short neck, things like that. But in terms of their habitats and things like that, biology, these guys would have lived in montane rainforests. And the initial description actually describes them as feeding on bamboo like a mammalian giant panda. Which is probably not so true, but there is interesting like that. we'll get into it. They're actually one of the largest mammals found in New Guinea. They stand about a meter tall, about 3 feet tall, close to 2 meters or 6 feet long, and weigh between 75 to 200 kilograms, or between 165 to 441 pounds. They also described that since little have changed since the late Pleistocene, humans may actually have been a big factor in this extinction of the species. And the head of the femur lies directly above the shaft, which is actually suggests that they reared up on their hind limbs to feed, so they could rear up very much like a ground sloth or something to feed on plants. And dental microry actually shows that these guys were not feeding on the big fibrous bamboos that we used to think, but actually they fed on softer plant material, which is quite interesting too. And interesting, they have shoulder joints in their elbows and the humerus as well, that actually is more similar to those of kangaroos rather than other diprotodonts. So it's a little bit of evolution there. So they probably use their arms a lot more for browsing. And they are related to a couple other species. They are, as I mentioned, they are diprotodonts, so they're related to Diprotodon, a lot of other modern diprotodonts, which is most marsupials that are from Australia, to be honest, like possums and not possums, but like owl possums and obviously wombats and things like that. But they are related to Zygomaturus, which is from Australia. Also, macaw, which is another species of a big diprotodonts. But yeah, really, really cool. Love how these guys have come out. Nice to see some weird prehistoric animals getting some love. I definitely love talking about these guys. And let's have a look at the cute little baby. Look at the cute little guy. So being marsupials, I know they would have been born quite small, and then they would have been living in a pouch in their mother. But yeah, it's nice to have a big baby. Really, really cute. I do love these guys. Very, very awesome. Okay. So last but certainly not least, we've got a very cool GreatCakesMod. We're going to have a look at an Nimravid. We've already covered a couple of Nimravids, I think. Oh, no, Babrafelids. This is Hoplophoneus. Let me just get out of there. This is Hoplophoneus Primaevus. So Greek, it means kind of murder weapon. So that's pretty interesting. So these guys are an extinct genus of Nimravid, which was a group of saber-tooth, false saber-tooth is kind of what they're called. They're actually quite distant. They're more closely related to civets than they are to true saber-tooth cats, like Smilodon and Macarodus and things like that. So these guys were much later. They just convergently evolved the saber-teeth and cat-like features, that they're more closely related to things like civets and things like that. But yeah, these guys are endemic, are only found in North America during the late Eocene to early Oligocene, so between 35 to 29 million years ago, and existed for about 6 or so million years. And in 2016, all North American species of Eosmilis were put into Homocephalus. So the species here is the type species is Primaevus, which is quite interesting. So these guys, as I mentioned, they were not a true cat, very similar to their body and their body wise, and that they have like a very robust body and like shorter legs compared to most cats. And look very similar to cats, very much most ways, you can tell, but it's very different in a lot of other ways. The largest known specimen, I believe, was estimated to be about 160 kilograms, so about the size of a large leopard. And there is actually some that are the size of leopards, and they only have like moderately bigger canines. So there's a real variety between the different species of Hoplophoneus. Some actually have also very large upper canines and a massive flange at the front of their lower jaw, as you can see that here. So yeah, one of the few different interesting ones. So really interesting as well, there was a pathology found in a specimen. So an adult specimen was actually found in 2010 from the Badlands National Park in South Dakota that found bite marks on the skull from another individual of Hoplophoneus. So from looking at it, they would have been wounded by the rival saber teeth. And then regrowth on the bone around the injuries actually showed that they actually survived this attack. So it's very likely that these guys would have fought each other, for either territory or mates, like most cats do today. And they would have often aimed for the back of the skulls or eyes of their opponent with their saber teeth to attack each other. But yeah, it's very interesting that we can learn that from the fossil record. And how can you not love false saber tooth? They look really, really cool. Now, rabbits, because the evolution of saber-teeth is very interesting. There's a book by Mauricio Anton called Saber-tooth that talks about all the different types, like Babrafelids, Gorgonopsids, all those guys, and how they evolved their teeth and convergently evolve them and how they use them differently from each other. But it's really cool, and it's the cute little cubs. How cute! How can you not love these guys? Really, really awesome. Love a Hoplophoneus. Nice. I remember seeing a skull of this guy that was like sale for 16 grand. I was like, if I had the money, I would love these, but of course, was not meant to be. But really, really awesome. Love to see some extinct animals, and GreatCakesMod really always does a wonderful job. So, yeah, I'm gonna pull out of here and finish this video. Let you finish them. I don't know what's up with my mouse, but anyway. So I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.